Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Solo ReacTalk. This morning, I'm going to be reacting to Paris Under the Swastika, Collaboration and Resistance on the Homefront playlist on the World War II YouTube channel. If you guys want to check out my previous reactions to the other videos on the Homefront playlist, remember the playlist card is going to be at the top right here. Just click on it and be able to access them. If you want to check out the original video as well as World War II YouTube channel, the links are going to be in the description below. Yes, guys, this is the last video on the playlist of World War II on the Homefront. And I would just like to say thank you to all those who contributed in creating all of these very informative videos on what has been happening centered around World War II, especially around women and children, in these different countries that were affected during World War II, and how the governments, either mistreated or were trying to treat all the citizens fairly as much as possible in their cultural aspects and in the society that existed during that time. And yeah, all this information was also really interesting to know about, especially when it delved deeper into the involvement of women in World War II and how they contributed in creating a force to be reckoned with, I would say. Yes, they may not have been on the front lines fighting like the men, but in their own ways they also contributed, and also as society as a whole, in terms of the different stratas of society, whether you were part of the rich or you were part of the middle class or the poor, they also had their own part to contribute. Infrastructure of the different cities during World War II were also contributing to the safety of civilians. Some of them had bunkers. Some people in their private homes had bunkers. Some people had, other forms of technology that would protect them from bombing campaigns from either the Germans or the British also, bombing Germany. So yeah, there's different stories, different hardships, different advantages that have been taken into account during World War II, where the women had a role to play, and it was a very important social fabric, in terms of society and how they would pull through World War II, whether they were part of the losing side or they were part of the side that had victory. It was very important that women and men in their own ways were contributing to making history. It may not have been one singular person to say that this is the woman who changed society forever. It was not like that. It was a combination of different women in different places in different times affected, and it all contributed to what we would see today in terms of women emancipation, social mobility, economic mobility. And from World War II, many of these things were starting to rise up, and they were beginning to become something that would succeed later down the line for women and for children included. And yeah, it was really good, having all this information. I think I might have to just watch them all again in my own personal capacity, so that I can just, further remember, these key events, what was important, how countries dealt with preparing themselves for World War II, or how other countries, prepared themselves for invading other countries, and the reasons why they were invading, especially when it comes to Germany. So yeah, it was all very interesting and entertaining. Some of it entertaining, and then others it was just terrible. Honestly, it was just terrible, the type of information that we got in terms of World War II and the actions of different countries and people within those countries. But there were some things that were entertaining as well. But yeah, this was good. This was really, really good. Thank you. Thank you to World War II. Thank you to Anna. Thank you for being a great presenter. Really, she did a good job here. And yeah, let us continue with the last video. Paris under the Swastika, collaboration and resistance on the Homefront playlist, World War II YouTube channel. 3, 2, 1, go.
In the early hours of June 23, 1940, Adolf Hitler landed in Paris. A visit has been my deepest desire for years, the Führer told one of his travel companions. He was captivated by the city's art, visiting the opera and Napoleon's grave, calling Paris an art metropolis. But this day, that Hitler later called his happiest day, was a paradoxical journey through art and destruction. As he drooled in admiration at most of the City of Lights, any monuments that offended his ego were ordered to be destroyed. Much like his visit, the German occupation of Paris will be a paradox of comparatively benign attempts at integration and the usual horrific brutality by the Nazi occupiers. This is On the Homefront, a series of World War II in real time. I'm Anna Deinhardt. Yes, we're going back to 1940, just after France has fallen. The armistice has been signed. For Hitler and the Nazi Party, it marks the end of 22 years of disgraceful peace. For the French, it marks the beginning of 4 years of horror and despair. France is in free fall. Hundreds of thousands are refugees from the advancing German troops. They have experienced weeks of uncertainty and dread. As the German war machine plowed its destructive path through France, it targeted the refugees on purpose to break the will of the population to fight and resist. In Paris, at the beginning of June, between the 8th and the 13th, 200 scheduled and 100 unscheduled trains leave Paris carrying frightened and shocked Parisians away from the threatened capital. By then, parts of the government had already evacuated as soon as the Germans were 120 kilometers from Paris. The rich and powerful fled as unnoticed as possible in an attempt to prevent mass panic. Their flight from Paris
I wonder where they're going, the rich and powerful.
And across France leads to a complete failure of government, with many citizens arriving in towns and cities on their flight left to fend for themselves without infrastructure and support. The police forces also stop working, and soon hunger and desperation is accompanied by violence, looting and plundering.
So the entire government has collapsed in totality. There is no one who is able to take command of the police. There's no one who's able to take command of regional governments, or provincial governments. I don't know what type of a sub-government structure does France have exactly. Whether it's provincial or is it a state or is it regional kind of government. I'm not entirely sure what type of internal governments do they have? What is it called? In fact, let me just search that up. Hold on, guys. Hold on. Yes, they call them administrative regions. Yes, something that we would akin to provinces or to states. If you're living in the United States of America, you have at least 50 states. In South Africa, we have 9 provinces. So yeah, in France, they call them administrative regions, and they have around maybe 18 of them, they have around 18 administrative regions under the French government. And what I'm just asking is all of those regions now just leaderless? No one from the government, from the central government or from the regional governments, are able to become the leadership that is required for France to continue as a civilization. That's what I'm wondering. Because yes, they did capitulate to the Germans, but it doesn't seem like the Germans are interested in having administrative responsibility over France. Yeah.
Then a new strong leader emerges, Philippe Pétain. The installation of his Nazi-friendly regime signals an end to the absolute anarchy consuming France. While the French people quickly embrace this new government based in Vichy, they have only hatred and contempt to spare for the invaders, the aggressors, the occupiers, the murderers. In other words, the Germans. Satirist and journalist Jean Gaultier Boissière witnesses 3 German soldiers indulging in Bordeaux wine, beer, cognac, and sherry at the Cazenave, a Parisian restaurant. They aspire to be Parisian, he later remarks. Their lavish dining is starkly contrasted by the suffering of many French citizens. They not only seek to enjoy the food and drink, but also attempt to engage in conversations with Boissière and his friends. They boldly speak French, implying a sense of entitlement to the culture. However, their efforts at friendly conversation are swiftly halted with just 2 nonplussed words of incomprehensions. Yes, sir? 2 words with a clear message. You do not belong here, and our language is not for you. You will never be French. Never one of us. An exchange that is typical of the feelings of Parisians towards the invaders as their city becomes decked in swastika flags, flying against widespread shortages, while German soldiers swim in Parisian luxuries.
Yeah, they're appropriating everything and anything that is French, that is within the city of Paris, and they're making it their own. Including the culture, the languages, the people. They're trying to integrate parts of France into the German psyche and society. Not all of France. It seems like they're only focusing on the capital city of Paris. I don't know about other cities, other administrative regions of France, whether they're also trying to do the same thing there, but it seems like they're focusing on the major city of Paris, and that's it.
Common way to express the sentiment was to ignore, even refrain from even looking at the Germans.
That's not going to help. Not really. Just ignoring these people and letting them do as they please is just not going to help. You're going to have to resist. You're going to have to fight them. If you ignore them, they're just going to continue doing as they please until they completely consume you. You have to fight.
For them, Paris would be la ville sans regard, literally the city that doesn't care, with the double entendre of not even offering a look. But the Germans are everywhere, impossible to avoid, their mere presence a burden on the city. Léon Vert notes that one may think that with every interaction with the victorious German, a piece of our dignity, be it already so small, is on the line. Now, the occupation of France in Paris is different than, for instance, Poland or even much of Western Europe. Berlin wanted its soldiers to behave, to be forthcoming and polite to the natives. The famous philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre recalls, "No one should think that the Germans had ready-to-fire rifles with them while on the streets. Do not imagine the French with a piercing, spiteful gaze. One should not forget that the occupation was a daily affair." So, immediately after occupation, resistance, if there is any, is passive resistance, together with a belief that Pétain would lead France out of defeat and into a better age.
That old guy who supports the German government? No.
Not everyone agrees with this approach, though. There is resistance, but it's fledgling. And then there's Charles de Gaulle and his Free French opposing Pétain. But we should be clear that there are a small minority until the summer of 1944. Now,
that's how it always starts. Resistance are not just immediately a big organization, and they topple governments. It takes time. They start out small. Sometimes it's just one person or two people. And over time, they grow into a far larger, organization. So yeah, humble beginnings.
Me and Sporty have talked a lot about all that, so you should check their episodes for that. And it isn't that Charles de Gaulle's message from his exile, rise up in active resistance, falls on deaf ears in France itself. On the 18th of June 1940, the art historian and future resistance fighter Agnes Humbert is fleeing from the advancing Germans. Her convoy of refugees stops in a small town just south of Paris. Somewhere nearby, amongst the exhausted people and their most precious belongings strewn about the roadside, a radio is playing. Coincidentally, she listens to de Gaulle's speech on the radio, a general she does not know, his message rough and imperious, not really suitable for the radio. Yet, his message is clear and inspiring. He calls the French to gather around him and to continue the fight. I feel that life is returning to me. A feeling I thought had died for all time had returned. Hope. As the occupation continues, de Gaulle's star seems to shine brighter and brighter, whereas that of Pétain slowly dims. Simply put, from 1940 to 1942, many became disillusioned by the open collaboration of the regime, which often went far beyond what Berlin demanded. This is especially true of the active participation of the Vichy regime and many French police forces in the deportation of Jewish people in France. During 2 days in July 1942, the French police, without the participation of a single German, carry out the Veldiv roundup, arresting 13,152 Jewish Parisians and foreigners in the cities, including 4,000 children.
We know where they're going. We know.
Man is 17 years old when he and his mother are arrested and become two of the 8,000 brought to the Velodrome d'Hiver, Paris indoor cycling stadium. The rest are taken directly to the Drancy transit camp. Léon and the others are to wait for buses that will then take them to somewhere else. Nobody knows where, but some have horrible premonitions. Through the following days of waiting, his mother encourages him to run as soon as he has the chance, to leave her behind, to escape. When buses arrive, Léon gets his chance. He throws his luggage to the side and rams himself right between two policemen standing by. He is fast enough to get away that day. Many others are not. As you may have seen our War Against Humanity episodes, tens of thousands of Jewish people in France, mostly foreign refugees, are taken away this way. Most will be murdered at Auschwitz. Despite this French collaboration and widespread anti-Semitism among non-Jewish French, this kind of brutality gradually erodes Pétain's support and popular faith in his vision for France's future.
There's a future for France under this type of government, led by this type of man? No. There is no future for France. France will become a colony of the German, empire as it continues to grow. It'll become a colony and then eventually absorbed by the German government.
More turn their hopes to Charles de Gaulle and the resistance. But in the beginning, resisting may have been different to what you might imagine. We really had nothing other to do than to work intellectually and morally against the Germans, through propaganda, said Christian Pinot, founder of Libération Nord. In the early days, some resistant groups even supported Pétain and his regime, directing their actions and protests solely against the German invaders. As always, the communists picked a special approach. During the early stages of the occupation, the French Communist Party believed that the war was being waged between two imperialistic states and was to be condemned on both sides. And as time moved on slowly, all the groups expanded their activities to also target the Vichy regime. But plagued by political divisions, they remain small and ineffective. And when they do finally start to better coordinate in 1943, they face an increasingly effective effort by the occupiers to curb the resistance and its members. It's impossible to say what had more influence. Complacency, Nazi sympathies, fear of reprisals, Gestapo efficiency, or the political divisions within. Whichever it is, until spring of 1944, resistance in Paris and everywhere is the exception. But then comes D-Day, and an end to the dreadful occupation is in sight. On the 18th of June, Georges Leclerc hurries down the street from his flat on the Quai des Grands Augustins. The streets of Paris are bustling and full of activity. Like many resistant fighters, Georges had been a French soldier. Like many others, his first task this day is to get his hands on a gun. As you will have seen in both Spies and Ties and War Against Humanity, Allied efforts to properly supply the resistance for an insurrection have been at best faltering.
You mean to tell me you guys couldn't find places within the city that you know? You know the city of Paris. You know the underground network structures that are there. The catacombs. We've heard stories of the catacombs under Paris. You're telling me you guys couldn't hide weapons in those places? Hide weapons in some sort of workshop or a church or something, somewhere. You had to get Allied forces to try and transport weapons into the city of Paris or wherever else in France. Okay, wow, that's quite interesting. That means the Germans were really thorough in terms of, searching for weapons that could be a threat to their occupation of France, and particularly Paris.
A German lorry gets into an ambush. A grenade is thrown inside. An explosion rocks the nearby buildings and streets. Dust and debris are flung all around. In the middle of it, Georges. He scrambles for the truck, desperately searching for a weapon. Unfortunately, some of the Germans inside the lorry have survived. One of them draws his pistol and shoots Georges at point-blank range. Georges Leclerc's life and fight is over, ended just 1 week before the liberation of Paris. Today, in 2023, he and other casualties from his group are remembered by a small plaque at the place he died. More than 250 of these plaques line the streets and squares of Paris. Others are incredibly lucky, such as Armand Bocquier, taken to be executed by the Germans on the 19th of August near Place de la Concorde. He survives 14 bullet wounds and will receive the Legion of Honor 50 years later.
14 bullet wounds. And he survived. Oh. No, I'm sure whatever God you prayed to was protecting you. Your ancestors, they were also protecting you. 14 bullets. And you're alive. That's crazy.
Stories like these are the exception, though. The vast majority of people who rise up contribute effectively to the liberation of the city and its popular uprising for sure. On the 11th of August 1944, railway workers across Paris go on a wild strike. A strike that soon spreads. Postal workers, the press workers, the metro workers all cease their work. It's finally an act of active defiance, as if to say, this is our city and our country. As the strikes turn into an uprising, barricades are erected across the entire city, and wild and violent fighting consumes it. Then, on the 24th of August, some time after 9 p.m., the great bell of Notre Dame rings out, to spread the message. The first Allied forces had arrived to the Port d'Italie around 8:45 p.m. the same day. The next day, the Germans surrender, and finally, 4 years of occupation, humiliation, and torture are over. Paris outraged, Paris broken, Paris martyred, but Paris liberated. In the city, over 1,000 resistance fighters and 582 civilians have died, and over 2,000 injured. More than 3,000 have been arrested and deported to concentration camps before the Germans flee. They all become part of over 90,000 resistance across France killed, wounded or tortured, and deported through the occupation. It almost seems like everyone joined the resistance in these final days.
Everyone? I don't think so. I mean, there were some who were supporting the Vichy government with Pétain. So there's just no way that it was everybody. And I would actually, highlight the workers. It is the workers who were the ones who stood up and decided that, enough is enough. It is the workers in their majority that, started this resistance against occupation. Yeah. I don't think it was everyone.
But was this really the case? French historian Henri Rousseau coined the term résistentialisme to describe the exaggerated historical memory of the French resistance during World War II. In reality, only about 5% of the French were even nominally members of the underground. Of these, scarcely any ever fired a shot, dynamited a train, or sent a clandestine radio message. Officially, only 220,000 resistance fighters are acknowledged by the French government, which is less than 1% of the wartime population. Some, such as Jean-Paul Sartre, were never actively involved in resistance, but he was portrayed as one of its heroes by the media shortly after the war. He never set the record straight himself, and like him, many others also wanted to have been, or at least seem like, resistant fighters.
Wow. Imagine you wake up every day, you go to your place of work, or you're walking down the streets and people are saying, oh, thank you for fighting for France, thank you for being part of the resistance. And you know that you were not part of it. You know in your heart that you were not part of it, that you never carried a gun, that you never, tried to send messages. You never tried to bomb any of the occupied, infrastructure or regions. You know it. And yet you continue to smile and to lie to people's faces, telling them that I was part of it. Oh, that's funny and sad at the same time.
In reality, many more French people had been passive observers or active supporters of Pétain and his anti-Semitic policies than the post-war government wanted to admit. It will take years for the French to deal with the trauma caused between 1940 and 1944. The anti-Semitism of the Vichy government and the participation of many citizens in it would not be properly discussed until the 1980s. Marshal Pétain and Prime Minister Pierre Laval will both be sentenced to death for high treason and collaboration with the enemy. Notably, deportation or anti-Semitism will not be mentioned with a single word throughout the entirety of their trial.
Why? Are they trying to save face? Huh?
Now, in September 1944, Paris is liberated, but in Berlin the Nazis still rule. To see how Berliners fared under Nazi rule, check out my previous on the Homefront video here. Don't forget to like, subscribe, ring that bell, join the Timeghost army, leave a comment below, all that good stuff, Thank you for listening.
Alright guys, that's it with Paris under the Swastika collaboration and resistance on the Homefront on the World War II YouTube channel. Yeah, the German occupation of France seems like they focused solely on Paris. Most of their energy and infrastructure and military resources, they focused mainly on Paris, it seems. Yes, they did create fortifications, preparing themselves for whatever allied force might invade the region of France, especially like during D-Day. They did invest in military outposts and fortresses, preparing for any type of eventuality. However, it seems that after the victory over France, the German government really wanted to show that they could unite, or should I say, they could absorb France into their growing empire. And they tried to show that in the capital city of Paris, where their German soldiers would start appropriating the culture. They would be starting appropriating the property, the resources, the lifestyle of the Parisians, and they would try to make themselves as if they are part of that community, they're part of that society. And yes, the French did not take kindly to that. However, their method of resistance was not really something I'm impressed with. Just ignoring your oppressors, ignoring that they exist, ignoring that they are here and they are using your amenities, they are appropriating your culture this way. That's not the right way to fight against an oppressor. That's not the right way to fight against those who are occupying your country. You have to fight. You have to fight. Ignoring them is just not going to work. And where Anna was discussing about how many people actually fought in the resistance against the occupying forces, it's quite telling. Really, it's quite telling. The majority of the society in France, they weren't really in it. They weren't really in the resistance. They were just going about their lives as normal as they could get it. And either some of them were supporting the Vichy government, some of them were in the neutral stance, and then some of them just didn't want to take part in anything, didn't want to do anything. They just allowed this all to happen and accepted their fates. They accepted their reality. But I would like to thank those who actually fought. Definitely, we must always remember them, and not these make-believe people who lie and say that they were part of the resistance. Definitely not those types of people. Definitely France needs to celebrate the workers, because also they stood up. They need to thank those who fought for the liberation of France as well, more than anything else, because if it weren't for those types of people, I think it would have been a bit more difficult for the Allied forces to take back Paris and to also continue on their march across France and liberate it from the German occupation. It would have been very much difficult. But because there were people out there who fought for France and fought for the liberation of France, no matter how small they may have been as a group of people, they contributed. They really did contribute. They set an example. And yeah, they did good. They did good. Whoever they were, in terms of the resistance, whoever they were, they did something. They tried something. Yeah. Alright guys, that's it. That's it with the last video on the playlist. And like I said before, I thank you again to Anna. Thank you to World War II YouTube channel for creating such important and fascinating information pertaining to World War II. And yes guys, this is it. This is where I sign off with On the Homefront. Hopefully you guys enjoyed my reactions to it. Hopefully you guys will also come back for future reactions to World War II history, or maybe other history videos that I'm going to be reacting to. I don't know if I'm going to come back to World War II YouTube channel. You guys will have to just, send a request for whatever particular, video you want me to react to from World War II YouTube channel, and I'll get to it as soon as possible. But in the future, I will be reacting to other historical videos or documentaries that have been requested, in the comment section. So if you guys have any ideas, you can send them my way in the comment section, and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. Yes, that's it. Remember, if you want to check out the original video as well as World War II YouTube channel, the links are going to be in the description below. If you like my reaction, please give me a like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Click on the notification bell if you want to be up to date with my latest videos. And yes, goodbye.